Together, we're learning how to have peace in the process of everyday business ownership by improving one step at a time how we think and what we do. I'm your host, Amy Stout. Let's think about this concept of a dream client. What even is a dream client? What is your dream client? How do you figure out who they are? Once you figure out who they are, how do you find them? And how do you convince them to work with you? There's a lot here. And today I am talking with BECCA, who has multiple businesses and a lot of experience in this entrepreneurial world and has spent a lot of time thinking about this concept of finding and attracting your dream client. This is something that is so crucial to success in business and getting in your stride and getting momentum, because you have to eventually find exactly your niche of what you're doing and who you're doing it for. And that's when you'll see the real growth. So join me today for my conversation with BECCA, where we dive all into this topic. Let's get started. All right. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited to have my new friend BECCA on. Thank you for being here, BECCA.
Hey, thanks so much for contacting me about being on the podcast.
Yes, I'm really excited. So I want to hear all about your business, and then we are going to have a really good conversation about working with your dream client. And I know that this is something that it's like such a battle for us. One, to figure out who our dream client even is, and then two, to be willing to say no to people who aren't. So
yes, it's so hard. It's something we still deal with too, like as the people who are teaching people about it.
Exactly.
It's so hard. Yeah.
Exactly.
So we get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I always say. Is like, I'm not above anybody. Like, we're all just learning and having realizations right alongside each other here. So
for sure.
So share a little bit about yourself and your businesses, not plural, which I didn't know about your second one. So
yes,
I love it.
I know. Yeah. So I'm BECCA Lamar. I'm a wife. I have 2 daughters. We live here in Michigan. My story is very, I think, similar to so many entrepreneur stories in that I went to school for design, did all the things, went into corporate, got the 9 to 5, and like literally from day one, I was like, I don't think this is for me. I remember, like, I look back on my time in corporate and I'm like, oh, I was the worst employee ever. Like, I don't know. It wasn't meant for me, and was always in and out of that world, trying to do my own thing, not working, getting nervous and wanting stability again, and going back into corporate. When right after my husband Patrick and I got married in 2016, we had all these years run together. But we had an opportunity to move to California for his job. So at that point, I was freelancing, and we were like, yes, let's go. That really pushed me to see, like, I didn't know a lot of people there. And we also lived in the middle of nowhere in California. Everyone here is like, oh, you moved to California, you lived at the beach. And I'm like, we did not live at the beach. We lived in like the middle of the state, mountains. It was amazing for the time we were there. And I'm so happy we're back.
Yeah.
So yeah, like coming back though, one of my clients that I was working with offered me a full-time position. I had just gotten pregnant with our first daughter, Logan, and it just seemed like the best fit for me. I was like, I have this baby coming. I'm going to be a first-time mom. They're going to offer me maternity leave, even though I in any other position, I would have not gotten it because I would have been so new. The work was great. Like, I'd been doing it. I felt confident in it. The pay was good. It was just, I was like, yeah, I'll do this. So then, about like, I think our daughter Logan, she was 9-ish months. And like I was telling you before this, I remember being upstairs in my office because I was working remote, and like listening to other people raise her. Essentially, like, they were with her 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And I was like, this is not it. Like, this is not what I signed up for. And I had an opportunity, I'd been dabbling in entrepreneurship before, and I just felt this like pull to make it real. And there was aspects about my job that I loved, and there was something that I was missing too, and that was that I wasn't getting to talk to clients directly, because in an agency with designers, like there's project managers, and that's just not how the hierarchy works, which completely makes sense. And I just, as a designer, I wanted to learn more about the businesses, learn more about the people, have collaboration that I felt I wasn't getting. So we were doing like a lot of branding in the agency too as well. So I loved doing that and creating these like visual identities for businesses, and we were specifically creating them for like these really big awesome buildings in like Chicago and LA, and like yeah, it was really fun.
That's
But
cool.
yeah, and like it was on paper, it was awesome, but there was just something missing. And so I left in March of 2021. Oh my gosh, I don't even know. 2021, I think. Or no, 2020. No, it would have not been 2020. I was there through COVID. Um, but it was, yeah, 2021 I officially left, even though I had like kind of started stuff on the side. It was terrifying, but like from picking a name, all of it, it all just kind of came like easily. And we actually named Halo after our daughter Logan, who we call Lolo. Um, it
That's
was kind of like a
adorable.
nod to like, hey, you are the reason this was created. Because
That's
just like
precious.
entering into motherhood, and people don't know that. They think it's just like a fun, like it sounds cool, right?
Yeah, it
It's
is.
kind of
It's a cool name.
abstract, but yeah, and we get a lot of like great feedback on it, because it's so hard to pick a name for a business. But yeah, we my husband was very supportive in it, and it was literally terrifying because I didn't do anything by the book. I didn't have a bunch of money saved up. Like I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I ended up giving them like a 4 weeks notice, which was, don't ever do that. Because like a
Yeah.
week in, I was so checked out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I thought I was being like nice, and like my people pleaser side was like, oh, if I give them more time, it won't be as bad. Like I was leaving regardless,
I've done the same thing.
two
I
or
feel
four
you.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, from there I started Halo Creative, which is the branding and web design agency that is now almost, it's 2.5 years old. Um, and we have had the opportunity to work with, I posted about this recently, but it's been over 50 brands, which I was honestly, so I was like, oh, it's probably like 20 to 30, and I'm like counting through my files, and I was like 40 something, like what? And it was
That's so
very
cool.
like, it gave me so much, like I had so much gratitude for what I've been able to build in
Mm.
such a short period of time, because all these people are trusting me
Yeah.
to help their businesses and help them. People come to us for essentially confidence in the online space, because
Yeah.
they're not feeling like their visuals are matching the level of service that they're offering, or they're
Mm-hmm.
like entering a new space, or they're just not connecting with the people and the ideal clients that they have clarity on. So,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times there's no clarity, and that's something that we help people walk through as well. So just, it's been like such a roller coaster over the last 2 years. But yeah, and in that time, we opened another business, Studio New, which is, I'm in it right now. It's a blank canvas rental space, is what we call it. It's essentially a photography studio slash event space. And we like created it for creatives, but to
Mm-hmm.
me, creatives is it doesn't mean like designer, painter, artist, photographer. It can mean any industry, because you can be creative in anything that you do, from the way that you're connecting with your clients to the way you're running your processes. Like we actually have a lot of real estate agents
Mm,
meet here for client events, client appreciation,
that makes sense.
workshops, stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's just, we always say like just come in the space and get inspired, because we've noticed quickly that some people have that, like you walk into an empty room and they have the vision, and then
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that don't, which
Yeah.
I didn't realize initially. Even my mom came in here and she was like, I just don't get it. And I was like, Mom, don't you see that you can like make whatever you want? And she's like, but what would I put in here? So
Yeah.
I quickly was like, oh, some people need to see. So we've been really intentional about showing everything that people are doing to show the range of the space, and kind of to again like spark that creativity, to have people be like, oh, I saw that they did this, I could do it this way with my business, or something like that. Just like
Yeah.
trying to utilize, I think it's like we literally haven't even scratched the surface at what really could happen here. And we've had,
Yeah.
like we said, we have anything from photographers rent it for a photo shoot. We've had, I think, 3 weddings, and it's a smaller space. We host like 50 people seated, so it's a smaller event. But with micro weddings being
It's a
a
thing.
thing now,
Yeah.
yeah, like we always said like, oh, I guess you could get married, and then we started getting inquiries about it, and I was like, oh, this is real. So yeah, and we've had nothing but like amazing feedback, which I'm just always about listening to our clients too, because I I want to hear how their experience was, because we can't think of everything as much as we try to. You can't always think about how the process is going to work through. And yeah, so just listening and gathering information and responding to it has
Yeah.
been our biggest goal with that. And just that's how I run business in general, like with Halo and Studio New, just seeing how things are working, realizing when something's not, and making a change to make it better. So I
Yeah.
always say that everything happens for us, not to us. So it's easy to be like, why is this happening to me? Um, and I say that too, like I'm
Yeah.
not perfect in any way, but just trying to switch my mindset to think like, why is this happening? What can I do to change something somewhere, either how I'm responding or how we're emailing people or how the process is working.
Yeah.
And like even over 2 years in, like we still are making changes. Like it's just, I don't think
Yeah.
anything's ever
You never
perfect.
arrive.
So
Yeah.
yeah, because you're constantly evolving and elevating your services and offering new
Exactly.
services. And
Yeah.
there's like, you just can't think of it all. So it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's like my story. We also, I missed a huge part in the story that we also had another baby in that time. It's like, I
Yeah.
can't, why did I forget that? It's just, there's so many moving parts. So
Yeah.
yeah, the week that we opened the studio, we had a baby
It's
as well.
crazy.
Um, do not recommend that, opening a business and having a baby in the same week. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a chaotic time.
Yeah.
And again, it all happened for us. I'm always like to Patrick, my husband, I'm like, we can literally do anything, I think, because
Yeah.
it really forced me to delegate, because I
Yeah.
was out of commission, and
Yeah.
my midwife was like, don't get off that couch for 2 weeks. And I was like,
I
what?
can't.
Yeah, I don't think I did. But or I think
Wow.
I did get off the couch, which she wasn't happy. But yeah, it was just like, I don't know. I always say like we have a very high capacity is what I call it. So like
Yeah.
I can do a lot of things. I can handle like juggling all these things. And for some people that's not normal for them, and that's
Right.
also okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, even now I'm like, okay, I think we're like getting our footing. Should we have another baby? Should we open another business? Like, and my business coach is like, what if you just like calm down?
What if you just like
Yeah,
live in what you've built for a minute? Yeah.
I know. And it is.
That's
And it's
funny.
so like, it's so easy to just look at our to-do list, which is literally never ending as an
Hmm.
entrepreneur and a mom and a family, and think like, what's next? What's next? What's next? But
Hmm.
to exactly what you said, to sit in what you've built and like be like, this was a dream at one point. Like even
Right.
now, I'm sitting in this space recording this podcast with you in this space that's literally meant for something like this.
Yeah.
And at one point, I just thought it was an idea.
Yeah.
So I get that all the time because I just saw something today actually where they called it like a glimmer, and they were like, oh, if you see these like little glimmers, you you can start seeing them more, but it's just giving you that sense of like a breath, like, oh, it's we did it kind of thing.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, but yeah, I could go on forever about my story,
I
but
love
that's like
that.
my
This is so
business
good.
story in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. You're a go-getter. That's awesome. Just always having a new idea, chasing a new dream. I relate a lot,
Oh,
but we have to talk about how we kind of rein ourselves in because I've definitely, our businesses are the same age. I started mine February 2021.
yeah, that's
So
awesome. Great
I
time
feel
of year.
like
Yeah.
great time, great time. But I feel like I have gotten myself in trouble because I haven't narrowed down my dream client. Like I narrowed them, like I knew who they were, but I was still trying to serve like a bunch of different kind of people, and I wasn't narrowing down like, okay, because this is your dream client, you need to just go after this client. And I've only
Hmm.
recently like made that shift, and I'm 2.5 years in. Like you would think I would have figured that out a little while ago, but I think it's not a very real thing that people can just struggle to actually narrow down and to like change the mindset. So I want to get into that, but I feel like we should start with identifying the dream client in the first place. Because when you start a business, you might not know. So, what is the process that you often see or that you have experienced yourself in figuring out who your ideal dream client is?
Yeah, for sure. This is something that people that I have dealt with and continue to, I don't want to say struggle, but just to look at, and that people
Yeah.
come to us for clarity on, because I think, like you said, it's so easy to just want to cater to everybody, but then you're not establishing yourself as an expert in one field. So, one thing that we really try to focus on with people is asking them about what makes their service or product unique and different from competitors. And then also what your business values are, because I think we personally have our personal values, and a lot of times as entrepreneurs that plays into our business. So um, it's something I'm working through right now too. Sorry about this. With, I don't say that I only work with women, but I predominantly attract women clients. And it's like, again, I've gone back and forth because it's intimidating to niche down and be like, and I hear like people being like, you're going to cut out half of the other audiences that you could work with, but you're able to then create this brand and visual identity that speaks to them so much more clearly than something that is general, because our society is, what's the word I'm looking for, conditioned to pick up your phone. You hear about a business or a product that you want, you pick up your phone, you Google them, or you go on their Instagram or their social media or whatever it is. And within a split second, you're like, yes or no. You know instantly if they're for you or if they're not. And if you trust them, you say, like, oh, yeah, this looks legit. Like, I've literally said those words before. And when it's not. Like, we've all been on the website where you're like, is this a real website? Should I put my information in here? And it's it's a way to connect with your ideal client that I think people take for granted. They think like, I don't need a website, I don't need to post on social media. But how are you showing up for your business when you're not there? Because when you're at a networking event or being introduced to somebody at the store or whatever it might be, wherever you're connecting with people, they get a sense of who you are as a human, and they get your personality and they feel your energy, and they understand in that moment, like, yes or no, I like this person or I don't, I want to work with them or I don't. And we don't always have that opportunity to be face to face with somebody. So your brand then is what's speaking for you when you're not there. So making sure that it's connecting with moms or women or maybe everybody or maybe corporate positions, not everybody, sorry, maybe a more general population, um, just helps your business so much more. And it's like I said, I know that it's super intimidating to think about narrowing down your audience, but when you do that, you're able to cater to them so much more because you understand how they think, how they act. Like I work a lot with moms as well, so finding ways to support them because you know that their schedules are crazy and not consistent. And like working around processes that way and finding offers and services that would make sense for somebody just starting out. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so important. I love what you said about it does the work for you when you're not able to be there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like part of your sales process almost. It's like the first part of your sales process for
Oh
people
yeah.
is your website and your branding and establishing your authority on a certain topic or a certain service. So, how I know you're saying things like predominantly working with women, working with moms. Is that something that you set out at the beginning and you're like, I want to work with women and moms? Or was it like as you worked with people, you're like, oh, this is who I like?
Yeah, it's been hard because I actually have some male clients right now, which is newer to me. And again, it's like everybody works so differently. Um, but I think too that a lot of times when you're starting, you think when you hear the phrase ideal client, you think like the industry or the product. Like I remember being like, oh my gosh, like a hand poured candle vendor or would be like an ideal client. But then getting into it, it actually has nothing to do with
Yeah, that's so true.
the industry, and it's more about the person.
Yeah,
So I think having an idea of who you want to work with starting off is beneficial. And then it is partly trial and error on seeing like what, and that's where the value part comes in because that's what I've noticed is the biggest factor in this. Like, we're taking on a corporate client right now who, in 2 years ago, if you said, I would have said absolutely not. Like, I don't want anything to do with corporate, but we have had multiple meetings with this team, and we actually align a lot on the values of what they're trying to build. So it was really interesting because I've also had, you know, people and businesses that I would have thought was ideal based on the industry alone. And the project just might not have gone how I had hoped, or it's an expectation that I had that I shouldn't have. So that's where I think it's easy to get in our own way by labeling ourselves like mom and women, but even going deeper than that and focusing on the values within there, because even motherhood, everybody parents so differently. So
yeah,
maybe there's just little pieces that you look for. And that's why I think like I do a 15-minute free discovery call. And I think that's
mm-hmm.
important because you can get a pretty instant idea
Yeah,
of if you align on the project and with the person. And if there's any red flags, like don't be afraid to say no, which is
yeah,
terrifying, right?
it is.
Because you're turning down money, and that's what we're all, it's like we're in it for passion and we're trying to make money.
Yeah,
So it's scary when you think like, oh, I'm gonna turn down this person and like what's gonna happen? You're gonna open up a door for a more ideal person to come in. So
exactly.
it's something, as hard as it is, like from experience, it's not worth it
Yeah.
because like if you have that feeling going in, you're gonna continue to have that through the project. And then how are you showing up for that client and what experience are they having
Mm-hmm.
to tell people? And I mean, you're still gonna put out a great product or service or whatever you're doing for them, and then they're gonna tell their people, and then you're going to continue attracting that person that you didn't really want to work with in the first place.
Yeah.
So listening to like the gut feeling, the instinct,
Yeah.
is important. And like I said, I get it. It is so hard,
Yeah.
so hard. And just giving ourselves permission to trust that
Yeah.
the right person will come along when the time is right.
Yeah.
I've Yeah, that's been like big for me. I'm always like, everything happens for a reason. The person will come, and it always
It works
does.
out.
I cannot explain how, yeah, it just always does. So,
Yeah. And like you're saying, like thinking more about the long term of a decision than the short term, because the short term is just like the initial income or whatever. But the
yeah,
long term is way more important of like what it would actually look like to work with them and what if they send you more people like them. Like that is such a bigger deal than this shiny thing that's in front of us initially.
yeah, it is. Yeah. And again, just like giving ourselves the permission to say no.
Yeah.
And I always try, you can say no with your heart first and in a nice way, and still try to help them by offering other resources or somebody that that might be a good fit for them.
Yeah.
And not just being like, no thanks, bye, because that's
Yeah.
part of your brand too, like just how you're speaking to them and the way you're providing value. And
Yeah.
that's something we've tried to do, like, hey, this isn't a good fit for us right now. We have this resource that's like on our
Mhm.
website, or you could contact A, B, or C person. So,
Mhm.
and we
Yeah.
always, before referring people, we always reach out to see if they'd be interested. So,
Yeah.
just still trying to show up the best that you can, because they even might think like, oh, that sucks that it doesn't work for me, but they connected me with this amazing person that
Exactly.
it was a perfect fit. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
And I know something that's really important to you is like why it's important to understand your dream client. So is that kind of what we're getting at is like it's important because you need to know like their values and who they are rather than just what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think it plays into so much of what we do in business. So, like, understanding why you have an ideal client and understanding why we're doing what we're doing in the first place is, I think, the most important part, even prior to getting branding done. So, it's
Mhm.
the strategy part. Because, like you said, you could say yes to any project, and like, you're gonna get burned out if it's not lighting you up and giving you energy. And we all have been there where like there's one project that you love and you love working on it and you show up for it differently. And then there's the ones that you like keep pushing down the to-do list and you're like, why have I not just done that? Because it's not aligned. So either something about the project or about the business or something is not aligned. So understanding both why getting clear on why you started the business in the first place and then understanding your ideal client, it just makes everything flow so much easier, and it can make business more simple. It's a tool that you can use to help yourself really,
For
because
real.
yeah. And the clients too, like, again, how are you showing up for them? What's the experience that they're
Mhm.
having when they work with you? And so having that clarity just helps
Mhm.
the process of business, I think. But
Yeah.
again, the values, I think, are something that's really big, and sometimes our personal values differ from business values. But
Yeah.
I have noticed at least like one or two tend to overlap,
Yeah.
um, because we're the ones that created the business in the first place.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I I relate to what you're saying of just like it makes things flow, it makes things easier because from leaving my options open for so long, I feel like I've just exhausted myself. Like I'm just tired
Yeah.
and I'm ready to just like have something set and run with it and like not constantly be rethinking and re-strategizing and re-brainstorming everything. So,
Oh my gosh. I know.
yeah.
Yeah. It's something that I deal with too still because we've had a lot of opportunities come our way that you look at them and you're like, how could I say no to this?
Yeah.
But again, like I love all my clients and I am grateful for every opportunity that has come to me. And it has made me get clear on who we want to work with and that. So
Yeah.
yeah, just gathering all that information, seeing
Yeah.
what's working, what's not, and then making
Yeah.
changes too.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
once you figure out what's working, just nip it in the bud and chase it and don't like dilly-dally. I think that's what my problem was is like I figured out what worked, but I didn't like zone in on it right away.
Yeah. And I think we know that too. Like your body gives you a physical
You literally
reaction
know.
when
Yeah.
something, yeah, you're either like, yes,
I
I want to
loved
do
that
this, or
call.
you're,
That was so fun.
yeah. And even if you get up, you're like, something wasn't
Yeah,
like
you can
that's
literally feel
enough
it.
to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listening to that, I mean, everyone says like, what's your gut say? Like it's real.
Yeah.
It's
It
real for
is.
me.
It
So
is.
um yeah, like yeah.
So once people kind of figure, once we figure out, okay, this is who I'm going after, and we zone in, then there's this whole challenge of how do I position my marketing and my messaging to attract them.
hmm
So
Yeah.
let's dive into that. I know that marketing and messaging are like two separate things. So, whatever you feel like you want to tackle first, but what would your advice be for someone who has made the decision and is ready to laser in? What do they need to think about? What do they need to change? What is important in that conversation?
Yeah. So we actually just did our first in-person workshop and it was for beginning entrepreneurs, but we covered the strategy part that we were just talking about and then covered the visual side of it. And what we focused on was a color system and color psychology and like how because there's what's the word I'm looking for? There's intention behind what we do. And I think so many times people start off as a business and they're like, I'm going to pick my favorite color.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's so many versions of that color. You say, I'm going to pick blue. Is it light blue? Is it
Yeah.
dark blue? Is it royal blue? How are you using it? What supporting colors are you
Yeah.
using? And the same with the fonts. So, colors and fonts and images are our three like big targeting points that we
Mm-hmm.
covered in the workshop. And it was really just to create the foundation of a brand. So, and this is talking about like the visual identity side, and we'll talk about messaging in
Yeah.
just a second. But I think like if you are in a place where you have resources to hire a brand designer, obviously that would be my recommendation.
It does make
And
a
I
big
think
difference.
there's a time and a place too. Like if you don't have a
Yeah.
ton of clarity,
Don't
we
do it.
have started, we have, yeah, we've worked with people who are just starting out, and we've worked with people 10 plus years in the business. And we have people come to us in the beginning and they just kind of need something to get them off the ground. So we have different offers for them there. Whereas, at 5 plus years, like you're doing a lot, you have so much more clarity. So we've diversified our offers to be able to support people in so many
That's
areas of
really
their business.
cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
because I love like the new entrepreneur who's like, I'm gonna start this business, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, do
You
it.
still
And
need
then
something then.
yeah, and then I can't be like, okay, and pay me $5,000. That's
Right.
not gonna happen. I get it. Um, so we've thought about like ways to support them in all different areas of their business. So, but yeah, like focusing on the color system and the fonts and the images are huge, and it's it all comes back to psychology, which I don't think people realize is a huge part of all of this branding, because we've been conditioned to react to colors, and they just like, there's so many studies behind like what things do. Even I was just telling somebody at the workshop that like fast food restaurants, and people might have heard this before, but red and yellow together create like vibration, and it makes you
Mm.
hungry. And that's
Mm.
why they
McDonald's.
intentionally do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you could make McDonald's like this like artsy place, but like that wouldn't work because you're not going to be
Yeah.
hungry.
Yeah.
So they do it intentionally. And how are you showing those values that we were just talking about visually? Because that's what a brand does, especially a visual identity. It creates that feeling that we were talking about, that when you're in person and you can give that feeling, it's giving that person the same feeling without you being there. So they understand who you are and what you're all about. And, you know, if it is women, maybe it is more light and airy or feminine or something like that. And just they get a sense of what industry you're in, what you're trying to do, who you're trying to attract, and they say like, yes, this is for me, or no, it's not. So those three things are what we always push people. And that's even like just starting out, something that we would provide. We even have color systems on our website for like $19 that are created around like a direction. So
Mm.
there's like a mood board that you look at and you say, you think like, yes, this is for me, or no,
Mm.
and go from there. So
That's cool.
yeah, um, that's like the visual side of it. And then messaging, again, it's the tone in which you're talking to these people. So like,
Yeah.
again, I always just think about women because it's like who I work with a lot, but um, are you being more friendly and authentic and approachable, or are you more traditional, corporate, like even just how you like say hi in an email? Are you saying hello, Amy, or are you saying, hey, Amy, how are you? Like, it all plays a little role in it. And I think for us specifically, like I try to keep my level of expertise by being professional, but it was still will throw in like a little bit of my personality, because I want people to understand who they're working with. Like I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. Like as much as I have figured out, like none of us have it all figured out.
Yeah.
So just being transparent, and even just keeping the communication open, and how you what's how you connect with your audience. So if it's through social, if it's through email, if it's
Mm-hmm.
through a handwritten note, like all of that plays into the messaging side.
Mm-hmm.
I think at least with the tone, because it's it's a big factor that I think we take for granted sometimes. And just being authentic, I think, is the number one goal, right?
Yeah.
And everybody always says that, right? Like, I want to be authentic, and it's so hard because on social media, there's a lot of not
Yeah.
authenticity going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's easy to share all the wins, and it's hard to share when things aren't going great.
Yeah.
So even that playing into your brand, like are you only gonna, like, in a sense, if you were aiming for like really high ticket corporate high level clients, like you probably
Mm-hmm.
aren't gonna show that the faults. Like you're not going to show where things went wrong. But in this smaller business world, with women, if you're attracting, like they want to know that you understand what they're going through. So like for
Mm-hmm.
me, I do share some things that we've struggled with, because I think it's important for people to be like, oh, she's human,
Mm-hmm.
and not this crazy like unapproachable person. So
Mm-hmm.
um I think there's just so many factors of branding that people don't consider, and creating just the whole environment around the
Mm-hmm.
brand is important. So, and again, it all comes down to like listening to what feels good and what doesn't. So, that's, at least with the entrepreneurial world with solopreneurs, I think that's the biggest thing I can offer, is to just do what feels good. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how you'll be able to build your brand.
Yeah, pay attention to it and don't be afraid to say no to the things that don't, which is
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
But that's really it. I love that. These are so helpful, Becca. Thank you for sharing. And I
Yeah.
love that you teach on this formally. And so I will have everything linked below, like all of your website socials for both
Awesome.
businesses so people can find you
Thank
and learn more
you.
about you. But my last question is, what is bringing you peace right now in your life or business?
Yeah, I love this question. And I thought about it so much as I've been listening to the podcast because,
Yeah.
like I said, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the grind and the to-do list and all of it. And for me right now, it's that I have been able to create this life that I dreamed of, really, with being there for my kids and spending more time with them than working, while still having two successful businesses. And I know people think that sounds crazy, and it's not. Like,
Yeah.
you can
You can
do
do
all
it.
of these things.
Yes.
Yes. And I can't tell you how many times people have said, you shouldn't do that. You can't do all of this together. You can. You can do anything you want. Like, if it's on your heart to homeschool your kids and work full time, you can make it work. Like, two things that I think we've been taught that can't fit together, you can. So, just with all the resources that we have now and the way that I think the work life is changing for so many people, yeah, so that's been bringing me a lot of peace, just knowing that what my goal was with starting this, like, I'm sitting in it, because it's easy to get wanting to fill up the cup even more. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's beautiful. You can do that at each stage because it's like I can look at what I dreamed of and see that, like, yes, I have that now while still holding that I have more dreams, you know?
Yes.
And
Oh my
but
gosh.
at any
Yeah.
point, it's so important to just stop and look back.
Yeah, it is. And to like sit in it. And I remember somebody physically at one point was like, look at what you've built.
Yeah.
And I like, now I'm able to do it myself a little more. But yeah, that's just, if anybody is listening to this, like, give yourself permission to do that, like, right this second, because we're so like hustle and bustle all the time that we have accomplished so much, even every day, like writing down a list of everything you accomplished that day instead of the to-do list, which is like a negative way of thinking about it, like
Mm.
saying like what I did,
Yeah.
even as small as like answering an email, you still did that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I try to do that too. I looked up at the clock yesterday and I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost the end of the day and I've only been focusing on this one thing and I still have four other things on my list. But then I was like, no, this one thing needed to get done and this was really important and this is very productive that I've spent all this time on this, so it's okay.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And yeah, don't be afraid. There's a time and a place for all the things. And I think we love to like pack our schedules a
Yeah.
lot. And like, I do the same thing. I'll be like, I can definitely finish these 5 projects today. And like, no, I could finish one.
Yeah.
So allowing for white space even on the
Yeah.
calendar, where like, if a project does run over, you have that. And then if you, this is something I need to do better myself, but if you finish it, to take a break.
Yeah. Take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I struggle with that too. I'm so black or white. I'm like all in or like all out. I can't
oh
like break in the
yes,
middle.
somebody just told me, they were like, you have an athlete brain from like my years in like gymnastics and all
Yeah.
that. But it's like carried over into business, which
Yeah.
could be worse, right? But I am very like all or nothing. And
Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for being on today and thank you
Yeah.
everybody for listening and we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Don't forget to connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and we would love it if you would leave a review wherever you're listening. We'll see you next week for more tips for how to become a peaceful entrepreneur.